Good evening, and welcome to Outside of the Grid, a podcast by Bart Farrell and Donald Hensley, where we have extraordinary conversation with so-called ordinary people that you meet driving down the street or in the stores, but you don't know their backstory until you learn it here, way out here, outside of the grid. Welcome to the show.
Oh, there he is. That's okay. That thing just takes a second. Hey, I heard you say, "Hey, Brad," or something like that.
Yeah, I just said, "What's up, Brad?" That's all you call it.
How you doing today, sir? Where you at?
Good. I'm just a little north of Waco on my way to the deserts of New Mexico, West Texas. A little town called Jal, New Mexico, Jal.
Jal. That sounds like an adventure.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be an adventure. It's me getting back into the oil field after about a year, almost, a year next month of being out in the oil field.
That doesn't sound fun. That is being out.
No, I mean, I had to go find other stuff to do. I tried working at a little gun manufacturing company there in Houston that does the chokes for shotguns, and then I moved on to trying to be in law enforcement for a little while. And tell you what, COVID-19 has just turned everything upside down.
Well, and I was going to say too, how my biggest connection with you is through music, and of course that's my biggest connection to everyone. And of course, you couldn't have played music if you wanted to make money there. So, COVID-19, 20 and 2021 it's a devastating thing.
Yeah, we had like 6 months where we couldn't play music at all. We were playing at least once a month with Lowly Bellows, and we played like our last show in early February, and then everything got shut down. Until like late July, they finally opened things up around Texas, and we were able to get back into playing music. And man, it's a relief, because for me, that's kind of a way for me to express myself.
Well, that's definitely what I know about you for sure. And of course, it's like that's kind of what feeds. People talk about people being either introverted or extroverted, and there's some people that are just music-verted. That is, that they get their energy and their power and their connection with everything through music. And I get that. If you're playing music, man, you get into a rhythm with other people, man. There's nothing like it. And then you get it taken away from you, like COVID-19 did for all of us. I mean, it's just, and now it looks like it may be going back to where we can't hear music again with this Delta BS.
Man, and we did a couple of those Facebook Lives where you're playing in front of a camera essentially, and it's just not the same as having people there. People coming up, tipping you, people buying you drinks, people coming up and telling you, "Oh, that was awesome," or "Hey, we want to request a song." And it's that interaction with the crowds, things you can't get. You have people scrolling and typing stuff, and you got to go look at the phone and say, "Oh, somebody wants to hear this or that." It's just a totally different ball game.
And the thing that is different as you can get without saying it's different. I mean, that's not even the same thing at all.
Right. It's kind of breaking up on me. I guess I'm out in the middle of who knows where right now. But
I was talking about that. I had to go in and get a charger, and that's why it sounded kind of bad there. It'll clear back up in a second. But yeah, I looked down at my battery. Actually, a little thing popped up and said, "Hey, dude, I want to put some juice in it." And speaking of that, you were just talking about jobs, and you mentioned something about a job maybe even with SpaceX or some assorted group. Tell me about that job.
Yeah, I think it was actually NASA that was hiring it, and they were wanting to do research on the migration of dust on the moon. So this
Blows me away.
is interesting stuff, man. It's like, well, are they sending this guy to the moon to look at the dust and watch it move? Or I imagine they're going to put sensors and cameras, and then you sit here on Earth, and each day you record, the movement of one speck of dust from one point to another, which is crazy because you would think that the stuff really moves on the moon unless a meteor hits it. Stuff really, there's a solar wind or something on the moon.
So, I mean, I guess you're implying that there's no atmosphere, thus there's nothing to move, no wind or anything, I guess.
Right, because, they tell us that the footprints are still there of the astronauts that landed. They tell us that the flag is still there, just sticking straight out, It's suspended. So...
Now, is it frozen? I guess it's frozen, too, isn't it?
Yeah. From the dark side of the moon, I imagine, is pretty cold.
Well, and frozen would be different there because of the difference in water in the atmosphere, too, I'd be willing to bet. You know what I'm saying? It's like frozen, it's just so cold that it's and with no water, it's just... I don't even know what that means. Whenever they used to talk about absolute zero, which I know space, probably at the moon, is not absolute zero. But in space, they talked about some places being absolute zero, which is like negative 327 degrees or whatever it is. I mean, that's just now that's cold, but I hear of places up north up there, and hopefully you won't have to travel to work up there. It's like negative 40 in North Dakota. Places like that, right?
Yeah, definitely cold. Wyoming is a big one. Yes, and North Dakota is a big one. Canada's got a lot of stuff that goes on. And then even Alaska, the coldest of all.
But now, I hear that a desert where I've got a point with this. It doesn't sound like I do. But now when you're going out there to the desert and you're headed out to a place near... you can tell us about where you're at, where you're going to. But, it's a desert at nighttime. It gets substantially cold, at least in some parts of the desert.
It's supposed to get cold. I think it's like 1,500 feet elevation, so, you have a lot higher elevation. And, supposedly it gets cold at night out here.
I just want to make sure you can still hear me. Can you still hear me, Bart?
Yeah, I hear you now.
Okay, now, where was it you're headed to be at the...
it's Giles, New Mexico, between Roswell and Carlsbad, New Mexico.
Carlsbad and Roswell?
Yeah.
You're going to be out there where the UFOs are at, aren't you?
That's right. That's what I'm going to have to look for each night.
Yeah.
Supposedly my wife said to send any pictures of UFOs.
Yeah. Well, I've been seeing them on TV, on YouTube. The government supposedly released them. I don't know what.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of videos here lately in the last 6 months or so. That's interesting phenomenon that they can't explain.
It kind of looked to me like there was a fly on the end of the camera flying around. Whatever, But, that's what we were talking about the other day, and it's like, I don't doubt that there is intelligent life in this universe, or the universes, if you want to believe in a multiverse. But me personally, I just don't think there's, maybe they have been here, but I just don't believe that they have. I just can't conceive that. I don't know that I could deal with it emotionally and mentally if I knew there wasn't a space alien flying around,
Right. Well,
I don't believe in it, but maybe I'm wrong. I guess in some ways I don't think that they've gotten here yet. I don't think they,
The Earth is what do they say? The Earth is 4.6 billion years old. So therefore, you know, the oldest rocks we found here that age. So they're saying that, you know, maybe that's probably when the Earth formed. Well, we're what? Maybe us, maybe a million years max that we've been on this planet. And then all those civilizations had 4.6 billion years to, you know, to occur. So maybe there is somebody that has had taken that time to evolve. Because everything's got to evolve, obviously.
Yeah. Well, I don't doubt that they have. I really don't. I believe that there's probably some of them out there, and I even would even go so far to say there's things so big that we're just they wouldn't even recognize us if they had something equivalent to a microscope of what we have. Because I just think that I don't know that we know how big we are. I don't even know that we understand our universe. I don't know that we can answer those questions. I think that there may be other things that our size, you know, but this universe is so big. You know, when I hear of what infinite means, of course, I've been told to stretch my mind further and think bigger and bigger than I ever have had before, you know, to think of what infinite and big is.
Right.
So, you know, so there could be creatures that are, you know, an order of a million times larger than us. You know, we could be a cell within their body, you know.
That's right. That's right.
So, you know,
right. So evolving, we could, you know, how was I going to say this? You know, so our future obviously is to accelerate ourselves off this planet, because eventually, you know, the sun will supernova and it'll heat everything up, and then black hole and suck everything in. So, you know, we've got millions of years to get away from that, but that's eventually what we're going to have to do as, you know, as people, is figure out how to do it and get to that next planet. But then when we get to the next planet, do we bring our technology, or we just drop people in, and those people have nothing but little wooden sticks and hammers or whatever they can find on that planet to start with? And then, you know, unless they write it down, you know, that may be how we got here to start. That, you know, we came and those people are gone, and their written record is destroyed or disappeared forever, because it was purposely destroyed or disappeared so that the next generation wouldn't know. But then we've evolved to this again.
Well, now, there's some people that say that that's already happened here right now, and it may not be because they came here from their space, and it may be. But, you know, there were supposedly some catastrophes, and about the time that they put out, you know, they started studying this Göbekli Tepe, I believe it is, which is, you know, a huge place in Turkey that's 12,000 years old. And it is supposedly, if you listen to people talk about it, is a place that people went to after the flood. And, you know, it could be, you know, the Bible references the flood, and so does the historical record of about 12,000, 14,000 years ago. And anyway, they go there, and it's like, it is kind of like starting over. We don't know how advanced people were that long ago. I mean, right now, inside of the rock we can look at for millions of years, but the record of human existence, I mean, you get further than 5,000 years back, and it's just crumbling. There's nothing much there, you know.
Right. Well, that's again, that kind of leads into geology, and we look at the rocks, you know, that are billions of years old, and we're looking at the Jurassic Age when the dinosaurs were around. And we try to figure out what the environments were, and we figure out that, hey, look, North Louisiana was a desert, you know, millions of years ago, and now it's piney wood, lush, somewhat subtropical area.
Yeah, and I think it was a sea before that. I mean, because but the people over in El Dorado that mine out I say that they pump out just like you would oil. Those chemicals over there in El Dorado, they say that's 200 to 300 million year old seawater placed there whenever there was an ocean here.
There was an ocean. That's right.
So
Exactly.
there's
So
a big old hole in it.
That's right. So the Earth is constantly changing. It just
Yeah.
takes it in geologic time. It takes a long time for it to change. So they're like, oh, global warming's doing this and that. It's going to create an ice age. It's going to create sea. Well, that's actually the natural cycle of the Earth. The Earth gets closer to the sun. Things get a little warmer. The Earth tilts a little away from the sun. Certain parts of the Earth, the equator moves up along the way. It's all about the Earth's rotation around that sun. I believe that's what we've seen a lot of.
Well, let's talk about that. Of course, let's talk about a certain case. I remember reading about the dinosaur era, the Jurassic period, what have you, being real hot, that there was no ice on the poles anywhere then. I mean, it was just a hot pocket, and that's why everything got to be big and mean, just because it was so hot. I mean, it's like there was no ice whatsoever on the planet.
Most of it was water. Yeah, they actually have. Even further back, you can look at Pangea, how all the continents were together, and they've essentially moved apart. But why were they all together in one big island, so to say? And then they've all separated, and they're still moving. Everything's still moving around, finding its place. But in our lifetime, it seems like, for years.
Okay. Hey, Bart, are you back there again?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. It just we're going to have little things where it kind of goes in and out, and that's okay. So,
Both in the country.
Yeah.
Wild country.
You're in the middle, like headed out there in the middle of the nighttime, driving across the desert, almost. What kind of country are you in right now?
Yeah, I'm trying to get up to I-20. It's kind of, it's prairie land. I'm starting to see some small hills now. Kind of reminding me of that little trip from Little Rock up to Russellville.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Nice hills though.
It's kind of like, I don't know, like my kids my oldest kid, my oldest child, he came along about the time that cars did. And that was talking about being out on the highway, and I've spent a lot of my life out on the highway. And, a lot of those places, man, through there, it's just so great. It's so weird how just you could drive along. And 1 minute you're in Little Rock, the next minute you're way over there in East Texas, and then West Texas, and the next thing you know, you're somewhere totally different. I mean, it's just amazing how it changes when you run across there. And I bet as a guy like you that study what you study, particularly the rock and such. And I wanted to swing back to that for a little bit. I know we could probably dwell on that for a little bit, but now you mentioned that that you could kind of figure out more about the past environment. And from what I understand, you're talking about maybe performing chemical type analysis of the rock to see what reactions occurred, to see what was there, or is there some other way of doing it, or how does that work? Or is it just a combination of other things?
No, it's a combination of things. What I'm going to do is actually we're doing the gas chromatograph and mass spectrometry. So they actually look as the material comes out of the ground, and we analyze. We'll tell you the C1 to C5, which is methane, ethane, propane, isobutane, pentane, and they're using that for reservoir characteristics. And then the mass spec part will actually tell you what elements are in there: hydrogens, carbons, all your minerals, heliums, and then it has like a database of thousands of elements that it can tell you what they are. So we're going to try to figure out what they're drilling to, and then they'll correlate it to other wells, and then use it for see how the reservoir
So now, whenever you run that analysis on there and you find all of that's in there, can you isolate and like grab out the helium as well as other things, or how does that work? Or do you have that kind of access?
Well, no. For us, it's just identifying it. We're just identifying it for now, and then the operator will decide what they want to do or how they want to approach the data that's available. So we're just collecting that data for them as it drills. It becomes valuable.
What else is? I mean, I don't know if you can talk about it. I mean, what else? What other kind of tools are you using? Are you using like any sound or anything like that? Or?
On this, I'm not sure what they're going to be using out here, but I know it's more expensive to use like the gamma ray resistivity, which they detect. Gamma ray detects the radioactivity in the rock, and then you also have the resistivity, which will detect. That's how they use to determine the difference between the salt waters and the hydrocarbons. And the sound will be the sonic tools, which that'll tell them how hard the rock is by sending a sound wave through the rock and then back to the receiver, and it tells how fast it goes. Based on how fast it goes, how hard or soft the rock is. There's all kinds of tools that they use. On these land jobs, they usually don't spend as much money as they do on the offshore stuff.
Yeah.
But we'll see what they're running when they go. But they'll definitely have the directional, so they can tell azimuth and inclination, so they know where they're at in the well. They like to drill these horizontal. So they'll drill down and then turn sideways, and then drill straight through the reservoir.
That's crazy. I hear most of them are coming in from the side, like they may come in from the side from miles away.
Yep, well, you got to assume it's just the formation is just a big flat piece as far, looking over land, as you can see, flat land. And then it's been buried by, thousands, millions of years of rock. And then in that rock was the sea creatures that they usually say the oil comes from, was all buried in there. And that's where they're going. They're going for those shales. They'll go through it and then they'll frack it, which is essentially just putting marbles in there and cracking it open so that they can allow the oil to freely flow.
You mentioned shale, but not the kind of shale I'm going to ask about. But they talk about there in rocks. So you've mentioned rocks and shale, and I'm thinking of shale oil, and I heard about it, but I don't really know that I understand exactly what it is or how much of it there is, or is it the feasibility of it. And you sound like a man that may know something about it.
Oh, yeah, a little bit. I mean, the shales and the limestones and the sandstones are usually your big reservoir rocks for oil and gas. And the shales, in the past, shales, we drill through it, and we just drill through it. It was not important. It was always the sands, for Gulf of Mexico at least. And then Middle East was always the limestones. The little fractures in the limestones would hold all the oil. And then now and I remember a time when I drilled some wells offshore that we drilled through the shale, and we pulled it out, and man, it would smell like oil and hydrocarbon. And I was like, man, I wonder if they can ever get to that. And sure enough, one day they figured out how to go ahead and stick marbles in there and allow it to give it some porosity and flow.
Yeah, that's a pretty amazing process. But as far as in the United States of America, they say that up in Canada and northern part of the United States of America, there's apparently a large collection of that type of reserve.
Right, and there's thousands of feet of this stuff. It was usually it's the bottom of a bay or deep marine environment that this shale is developed. And then it's the source rock for the oil. It's usually squeezed out of that and into the sands.
Yeah.
So some of it hasn't been squeezed out, so it's still in those shales. So there's a lot there that's been untapped, and that's what we're tapping into.
You know, speaking of tapping into, we were down in the Gulf of Mexico the other day at Grand Isle, Louisiana, and there's a fort there right off of the Big Island, and they're going through and dredging sand and other materials from 5 miles out and throwing up barrier walls on the barrier island. And at first I didn't know what was going on because all I could see was this huge ship out there. And then I realized that they had 5 miles worth of pipe laid down all the way over, snaking that stuff, that heavy sand all the way over. And I was like, goodness gracious, the amount of power that it takes to do that. But then I started thinking about, all these well drilling that you talked about just a little bit ago, that horizontal, basically, well drilling. I mean, and out there in those wells out in the Gulf, I mean, there's how in the Gulf, for instance, how deep are we drilling out there getting oil?
Some of the deepest wells that I've seen were around 35,000 feet. And that's further out because there's some spots where the bedrock is a little higher, and when I say bedrock, I mean the granite. So once you get to the granite, we don't think there's anything further down that's sedimentary. And you want all your oil and gas usually comes from your sedimentary rock. So if they hit granite or basement rock or bedrock, then they'll stop the well and say that's it. And they don't think we can go any further.
But that's 6 miles though. You thought 32,000 feet. That is 6 miles though. That right at it.
Yeah, it's very deep. They go very, very deep. These wells, and it's very tough drilling because they'll lose circulation, which is where you just start losing, your returns from the fluid. So you lose circulation a lot in these deep wells out there. So having a good game plan is very important. And that's what I was doing out there when I was working on those wells. Part of the game plan of maintaining our fluid level in the well so that the well doesn't collapse in on you.
Yeah, that would not be good. Now, the oil that's out there, is it stored locally, or is it being shipped off all the time, or what's happening with all that?
Once you do your exploration well, it usually takes like 3 to 5 years for them to get a platform out there or get, sometimes they'll put subsea trees down in a field, and then they'll pump it up to a single platform, process it, get water out of it, get everything, cleaned out where you have the oil, condensate, gas, everything separated, and then pump it from pipeline back to shore.
That's crazy now.
Yeah.
So it's a pipeline. That's right. That makes sense.
Yeah, they pipeline most of that. Sometimes they'll have barges, but most of the time they just go ahead and pay for the pipeline, and they'll connect in to another pipeline that somebody already has, and they have like a little gas gauge, and it tells them, okay, we sent 800 gallons of crude oil into the system here, so we want our 800 gallons on the other side. So all these guys may be sharing this pipeline.
Those rigs that we saw sitting out there at Grand Isle, how deep is the water that they're in?
I've drilled some stuff out there on the shelf. That's considered shelf drilling. They use it as the jack-up rigs. And that's probably, 80 feet, 30 feet, and then some spots up to 150 and 300 feet as you get further out, but mostly around 30 to 60 feet.
What is kind of the deepest waters that you've seen out there?
10, 12,000 feet when you get way out into the Alaminos Canyon block, and there's some blocks way out there that are really deep.
Hey, they say that 65 million years ago, a huge rock hit out there somewhere in the southern part of it. You had never been that far, have you?
No, that's around the Bay of Campeche. And I have heard, some people that have drilled that area before, and they tend to get to the metamorphic and igneous rocks very shallow. So when they get to that, they usually stop because that tells them, when that meteor hit, everything was burnt up in that field. It was either melted or
Yeah. When you're hot enough to melt rock, everything else around there melts too.
Yeah, it's all going. So it's like burning 50 million, cars in a second. When it hits, all that hydrocarbon is just gone. Somebody
was telling me the other day that they get those, and there used to be a whole lot more rigs out here down in the Gulf than there are now. But I was hearing that those guys are loving fishing and scuba diving around those things.
Yeah, actually there is a lot of that around the deep sea fishing is always better around the rigs because those platforms that house thousands of fish, it's kind of like a reef system because even the shallower stuff, it'll form barnacles and corals and all types of things to grab on. So it forms these ecosystems for all the fish. Porpoises are always around. You can, we used to fish off of boats, and man, you could catch tuna, incredible tuna, yellowfin, blackfin. You'd be lucky if you could pull it in because sometimes the porpoise would sit right out there and wait for you to reel one in, and they'll just snag it right off your line. You're not getting it.
That's fliggers are smart, aren't they? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We was talking to some guys the other day. We went and bought some shrimp off of a boat, or a larger, not larger, but for the island. It's one of the large ones, but they're pretty small. Fishing corporation there, and it was kind of neat because you got to be right there beside the boats and such. But now, whenever you were going out to rigs, you probably flew out there, didn't you, or on a helicopter, or did you ride a boat out there? How did you get out to a rig?
Usually the jack-up rigs are real close to the land. You take a boat. Unless you're a VIP, then you might get the little helicopter ride out there, which I had once. But most of the deep water drill ships and floating platforms are going to be helicopter rides.
I guess have you ridden those? I guess you obviously at least once.
Oh yeah, many times, many helicopter rides. There's only been a couple where we've had to stop because of weather, a storm coming in or something, and it just got real bad. So there's enough platforms out there that can find a place to hide, and they'll set us down on there and wait for the weather to blow over. Or, usually safety. You want safety. We were on one rig one time. It was real far out, and I was working the night shift about 2 or 3 in the morning. The Coast Guard called in saying that they needed a place to land and refuel because they were out there on a rescue mission. A lady and her husband were sailing out in the Gulf, and they apparently the husband had a heart attack on the boat, so they called the Coast Guard. They had to fly 300 plus miles out, pull the guy up in a basket, and I believe the wife either came with them and then they abandoned the boat. And the Coast Guard was doing CPR when they got to our rig on the guy, and our medic on the rig had to take over CPR while the Coast Guard guy rested, and they refueled the helicopter to head back into land with the guy. I never heard anything else on that.
That's strange. So tell me more about the daily life out there. I mean, I'm sure you spent many days of your life out there. What did the day look like? In terms of working and.
I mean, there's pros and there's cons. Technology's gotten a lot better. So to be in touch with your family, you're kind of away for your. I mean, it was 14 and 14, so 14 days away from the family, and. Email contact, that was about it. And it was once a day, Your days go by very quick because you wake up, you eat, and you walk to work about, 2 minutes. And then you're up and downstairs to go to the galley to get some food. You got to go to a safety meeting before your tour on, your 12 hours. Then it's either, balls to the wall, something really going on big time where they're drilling and you got 10-foot samples, you got people running around, you got to do all this and that. Or it's, kind of a little bit relaxed where you might be tripping pipe in and out of the hole, which for us it's relaxed, but for the roustabouts and the driller, that's where their balls to the wall.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And then you get off your 12-hour shift. You want to, man, you're beat after 12 hours staring at screens and doing what you got to do on that job, looking at samples under the microscope, testing everything, making sure all your sensors are working, making sure all your data is coming in, making sure it's going to land for the geologists and engineers in town to look at and make sure we're on track what we need to be doing. And then you go eat. If you're really crazy, some rigs will have a gym. You can go work out. And then you want to go lay down in your room, watch a little TV, satellite TV, and then fall asleep and get ready for the next day. Over and over, same thing, routine.
Now, what is it? Is that, well, two things. One, is it 7 days a week? And two, what is the food situation? Are you preparing your own food? Do you have certain times of day that food is served? How does that?
That's exactly right. Certain times of the day that the food's prepared. There's 4 meals a day that they're preparing. So they have, a breakfast, a lunch, a dinner, and then a midnight meal. But there's a little food area where you can always go in and get a sandwich or get snacks or something that will always be there. So if you're hungry for something, but they do have the prepared meals. They have cooks out there. They have, they got you set up. Tuesdays and Saturdays are steak days. Fridays seafood day. Sundays fried chicken. And it's, it's like that's the meal that's going to be there on all the rigs when you go out.
Yeah, I've heard of some good eating. Have you ever been on a boat for an extended period of time for any reason?
No, most of the boats have been, a ride out to the rig, 4 hours, 5 hours max. After 9/11, I was on a shell platform, and they sent us all in on a boat that day, and that was like a 4.5-hour ride. That's about the longest. Besides cruise ships, I've been cruise ships before.
Yeah, I didn't know if you'd ever done any kind of exploratory thing. I know that, I don't know exactly what all you've done. I kind of kept up with it. I know you've been out there on those, on those rigs. Now, I've talked to guys who went and spent time in like Trinidad and places like that. I mean, did you just kind of specifically stay out in the Gulf area, or where all have you been?
Yeah, most of my work has been the Gulf. When I got into the office, did a little office work, they put me on a few land jobs around Lafayette area, Louisiana, and then I did a little bit of Kennedy, Texas work on some land work there. But yeah, everything I've done mainly Gulf of Mexico, because once they get a good hand on a rig, usually those companies want to keep those people there. They want to keep things in place and keep you happy, and then you keep them happy, and it's kind of a situation.
Now, I'm curious to know, when we talk about the Gulf in general, how much of that is the oil for the world? And is it a large amount? I know there's other things that come out of there too, maybe natural gas. But give me a survey what all comes out of the ground down there.
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously natural gas and condensate, and then you get the sweet Louisiana crude is usually what they get out there. And we've run into big pockets of tar too, but they don't like the tar. They do not like tar because it usually sticks us and gums us up.
There's not anything you can do with the tar?
I mean, I imagine there's things you could do with it. You can make roads, but nobody wants to try to produce that stuff. It's nasty, and it gets everywhere when you run through it.
Yeah. I kind of lost you there for a second. But now,
yeah.
Hey, so now what you're doing now? You're going to be how you going to be living? You going to be living in a hotel or a trailer? Or?
Yeah, they have a trailer on site, so they said it had accommodations. So I might just like bunk beds or something. But they also said that the little unit that I'll be working in has a little area you can lay down on. So I did bring a sleeping bag and a pillow in case I need it. I'm not sure if they're going to have me one man on the job. It may be one man, so they need me working, being up for a little while, and sleep a little while, then be up for a little while. We'll see how the situation works.
So you don't even know, you don't know if you'll be using your truck every day or anything like that, or?
No, I shouldn't. I mean, I brought a bunch of food with me. I don't know what the eating accommodations are. I don't know if they wash, offshore, they wash your clothes for you. You just stick them outside the door each night. Next morning you wake up, your clothes are washed. This, you're probably washing your own clothes. They may have a little washateria or something.
Yeah.
On the trailer with some, dish, and hopefully they have, a place with some coffee, and I imagine they have a few accommodations to try to do you right.
Hey, man, we're getting close, but look here, I want to ask you, I want you to throw some stuff out there that you hear people talk about all the time. I come across people that say the Earth is flat. What do you tell them?
I tell them to look at the moon and look at the sun. They're both round. Everything out there is round.
So what do you say to people who say that we've never been to the moon?
I mean, you're entitled to your opinion. That's fine. It's hard to believe that we haven't been back to the moon. I would think that if it was valuable enough, we would be going all the time. And maybe it is valuable enough if it really is a chunk of the Earth that is ejected off the Earth. So
that would be interesting because it would have the same stuff, wouldn't it? I got what you're saying by that, and not just a chunk of dust or whatever.
That's right. So you possibly find a lot of the same mineralogy, and I guess that's why they're trying to do a lot more studies now. And I think robotics and automation, all that's going to have a lot of play in Mars and the moon. Because if we can't do it as humans due to radiation or whatever, once you get out of the Earth's atmosphere, well, these robots can do it for us and help us get there.
It's so weird to me. You mentioned those radiation belts, and that's the one thing that all the people always argue about with the moon thing. And I've studied it a lot. Of course, no one, I think the Van Allen radiation belt or something. I got deep into that stuff one time, and I was like, what am I doing listening to this? But there's compelling argument. I felt like there was a compelling argument to listen to it, because we had never been back. But then, like you said, though, the resources, number one, I think that things changed from what we needed. I think we figured out there wasn't big diamond mines up there, as you said, and it was so expensive and just couldn't do it again. But I think we've been talking about SpaceX recently and how they're, this new Starship, they put that thing together for a little bit the other day. Did you keep up with it enough to see that or no?
Yeah, I've actually seen, I think they're wanting to do these touristy things.
Yeah.
But I'd rather see more of the exploration things, competing with NASA. I mean, I know NASA's got a lot of funds and a lot of money into creating these spacecraft and these rovers. That's where it's at, and landed on the next asteroid and really seeing if this asteroid contains platinum, gold, and silver, and all sorts of precious metals. That's where we're looking.
Man, that Mars rover. Yeah, of course, Elon Musk, I learned this about him the other day, is that I'm like, why are people giving him so much money? And of course, and all the guys around him, like, because he's making it for them. Because he's doing all these cars and all other stuff. And now, But now I hear that like they're going to like compete with maybe even the airline industry. So they got some weird things going on over there with that space industry. But it's not the stuff that you're talking about here, like the Mars rover and all these Voyagers and stuff that are going through the whole, galaxy. In the case of the Voyager, I think. So, it makes you wonder. I see that there is a lot of money being spent. So people do think, like you mentioned a little bit ago, that we need to get the hell out of here eventually. I mean, like we should be seriously looking at a way to get out.
Yeah, you would think that, the next couple of generations should be able to figure something out. They can figure out how to create an artificial Earth's atmosphere. But remember, Earth itself is a moving spaceship. We're moving through space and time with the Earth itself. So where is it taking us? Our whole universe is moving, and we're moving with it. So maybe it'll take us closer to where we want to be.
That's profound. We got this station. That's profound. I made the comment on here, and if you've ever talked to me much, you probably heard me say this. That I was sitting there in a physics course, and I realized exactly what you're saying there, except for I didn't do the last part where it knows where it's taking us. I didn't think about that. Although I agree with that sentiment, I never thought about it. But anyway, when I realized that I was in this little ball of dirt, rock, and water that was alive, obviously because dead things don't make things that are alive. This is an organic spaceship, floating through this with a natural heat source in the middle of us. We're spinning around at 66,000 miles per hour, and all this stuff. It's so profound to even imagine that we're here, that we're cognizant of it, and that we're looking out into space, and we're even having conversations like we've had today, of thinking about our own planet and other places, and that stuff just blows me away, man. I guess it's just the fascination with life, being alive,
That's exactly right. It is, and that's part of figuring things out. A little bit maybe it's a little bit at a time. It's just probably in geologic time figuring things like this out. It takes thousands, maybe millions of years. But I mean, our technology has advanced so much from when we were kids. The technology is just going through the roof. So you would think that our kids are going to be more involved and more evolved with technology that can help support higher thinking. They say, these kids just play video games all the time. Their brains are going to mush. But maybe it's evolving their brains to...
I agree with you. Here's what I'm going to say about it. It was so profound to me the other day. This is going to be way out there, okay? But these people were talking about the other day that they were talking about ancestry studies, and they were talking about simulations. Do you ever watch any videos on the simulation hypothesis?
No, I don't think I'm too familiar with it.
I'm not too familiar with it either, but I did kind of look at it the other day because Elon Musk, the SpaceX guy, made that quote. He says that someone asked him, what are the chances that we are in base reality? And Elon Musk responded by saying 1 in a billion.
So he's giving it a chance.
Yeah, I mean, it's a chance, yeah. But I mean, that's, in other words, that's kind of a long shot, though,
Definitely a long shot.
I don't know that I would. I don't know that I buy into it enough to say 1 in a billion, though. I'd say more like 1 in a Googleplex.
Yeah. Do you believe things happen for a reason then?
I saw this. I got a complicated answer for you, but I believe that everything exists all the time all the time that's ever going to exist exists all the time. But I think that it influences itself back and forth. So what I'm trying to say is that I think that that you can change things if you set your mind to it.
Yeah, I mean, equal and opposite forces, right? Things.
Yeah.
If you go to the store, you're going to go to the store. You know, you set your mind to doing stuff, you're going to do it. Oh,
well, it's
just
like
simple things. That's simple things. But what about things that are outside your control, such as COVID showing up, or you know, an earthquake, or you know, volcanic eruption on an island, or a hurricane?
You know, the COVID has made me feel weaker than I've ever felt because it's invisible, you know, and it's something that, you know, it's just not, you can't see it, you know, it's just so hard to comprehend that there's some little bug that actually can kill you that runs around here, you know. I just, and, you know, I see what cleanliness does. And I know when I started relaxing my stuff, you know, what was going to happen. I let my guard down for my family. I have to assume responsibility for it, you know, because I let my family go into a situation that a few months before that, a year before that, I most certainly would never have occurred, you know.
Yeah. What about it?
I mean, so I have to own that, you know, and that's my part of it, because the rest of the time I've kept them healthy, and of course since then, you know, whenever we got it, I did everything I could. As I told you before, I'm a vaccinated person. I was running, I did not catch it, but I've been running to the stores, and yes, I went to the stores, and yes, I wore a mask, and yes, I kept my hands clean, but they tell me that I can't transmit it unless I'm having symptoms, and I hadn't had any symptoms, so I'm not transmitting it, you know.
Right.
Specifically, if I keep myself clean.
Well, I've heard that, you know, some of the skeptics will say that people that have gotten the shot or actually
transmitting the disease. I mean, I figure it could do some. I mean, if it's just on you, let's just say that I don't have it, but I have it in my house, and my wife coughs and it gets on my shirt and it rubs against you, and you.
Right,
you know,
you got tested. Y'all all got tested, right?
What now?
Everyone was your family.
I can't hear you.
Oh, I said y'all were tested, so you knew that you didn't have it.
Yes, multiple times. We've been tested 3 times, and all 3 times I've tested negative. So, I mean, and I'm only Brecken now. He only has 1 shot, and I think I'm losing off on the line on you, Bart.
Yeah, you are. I hear you now. I'm in and out of valleys.
Well, I tell you what, let's have a whenever you get settled again out there, man. Let's have a part 2 and kind of tell us about how things are going. Okay?
Yeah, sounds good.
I appreciate your time, sir. Be safe out there, sir.
All right. Bye.
Bye.